An anonymous woman walks into the Dallas FBI field office on October 9, 1967. She refuses to give her name. She tells the agent on duty that in July of that year, she met a being from another planet who had assumed earthly form. That being gave her information. Then, on August 21st, he was picked up and departed from the Earth. After his departure, she began receiving messages from what she described as non-earthly sources, messages she refused to explain. And then she handed the FBI a list. A UFO was detected 22,000 miles from Earth by radar on August 6th. Another was spotted over Antarctica on August 20th. A missile was fired at a UFO over Africa in 1962. It was protected, she said, by its force field. And then the final item on her list, a UFO was shot down over the DEW line, the Distant Early Warning Radar Network guarding the Arctic approaches to North America. And beings from outer space, she told the FBI agent, are currently trying to recover it. This is actually written in an official FBI document. This is a real government record. And that woman's account is not even close to the strangest thing in this file. But the detail that should stop you cold, the one buried near the very end of this document, tucked into the correspondence of a decorated former military man, is the claim that a Nazi-engineered flying saucer was not only real, but that it destroyed an American B-26. And the man who says he photographed it at 20,000 feet brought the negatives to the FBI. We will get to that. Before we do, we need to understand what this document actually is and why the FBI kept it for decades. The document in front of us is FBI Case File 62HQ83894, Section 10. It spans roughly 11 years, from 1966 to 1977, and it is a collection of letters, internal memorandums, secret classified telegrams, magazine clippings, and field reports that flowed in and out of J. Edgar Hoover's office, all under one subject heading: Flying Saucers, Unidentified Flying Objects. The file has been declassified under the Freedom of Information Act, and what it reveals is not a simple picture. It is a portrait of an institution that insisted, officially and repeatedly, it had no jurisdiction over UFOs, while simultaneously filing, routing, analyzing, and, in at least one case, classifying as secret the information it received about them. That tension is the heartbeat of this document, and it starts almost immediately. The file opens in September 1966. A widow from Goffstown, New Hampshire, 62 years old, her husband dead the previous year, writes directly to John Edgar Hoover, director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. She is a member of NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, a private UFO research group. She has just read her first issue of AFSCA, the Amalgamated Flying Saucer Clubs of America, and she is alarmed. With her limited understanding of how communists operate, she writes, it strikes her that the organization is backed by them. She wants to know if by subscribing, her name could be aligned with the Communist Party. Think about that for a moment. The year is 1966. The Cold War is at its height. Vietnam is escalating. And an ordinary American, a woman, a widow in New Hampshire, is so worried about the political implications of a flying saucer newsletter that she writes to the FBI director personally. Hoover writes back within a week. His response is precise and deliberate. The Bureau, he explains, is strictly an investigative agency and neither makes evaluations nor draws conclusions as to the character or integrity of any organization, publication, or personality. Individual. He cannot help her. But, and this line matters, her communication will be made a matter of record. It was. That letter is sitting in this file right now. Hold on here, because this detail gets even stranger when combined with what we're about to see. Because that AFSCA newsletter, the one that frightened the widow from New Hampshire, is also in this file. The FBI kept a copy, and when you read it, it is not a communist propaganda pamphlet. It is a genuine, somewhat wild, deeply earnest publication full of convention announcements, saucer sighting reports from across the world, and breathless accounts from people who claimed to have met the occupants of spacecraft. There are testimonials from contactees, men and women who said beings from other planets had landed, spoken to them, and warned humanity about nuclear weapons and the path towards self-destruction. The convention it advertises was held at the Centennial Coliseum in Reno, Nevada, in July 1966, at $2 a day. Speakers included people who claimed to have been taken aboard ships, contacted via telepathy, and even hosted at undersea alien bases. This is the material the FBI was watching, not from a distance, closely enough to retain physical copies, annotate them with handwritten notes, and route them through channels to senior officials. And the Bureau did not simply file and forget. Less than 2 months after the widow's letter, in October 1966, an internal FBI memorandum lands on the director's desk from the San Francisco field office. It is addressed to the director. The subject line reads, Unidentified Flying Objects, ISX, Internal Security, Unknown. It references 2 Bureau bulletins going back to 1947 and 1949, both titled Flying Discs, and it reports on a newspaper article quoting Michigan Congressman Gerald Ford, who was at that point calling on Congress to investigate UFOs. The Air Force, the memo notes, has commissioned the University of Colorado at an estimated cost of $300,000 to conduct an in-depth study of flying saucers. The FBI is watching Congress, it is watching the Air Force, it is watching the universities, and it is filing all of it under one case number. It looks like a normal report, but when you read between the lines, a question starts to form. Why does the world's premier law enforcement agency have a decades-running case file on flying saucers routed through its domestic intelligence division if this is purely a matter of no jurisdiction? By December 1966, the file thickens further. A researcher in London, a member of both the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics and the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, writes to Hoover from South Kensington. He had written years before, received a reply, and kept it on file, but his records were destroyed in a house fire. He wants Hoover to confirm the Bureau's previous position that FBI agents investigated reported UFO landings to determine whether any federal law had been broken, and that their findings were confidential. He also asks, pointedly, for Hoover's personal opinion on the matter. Hoover writes back. He confirms the Bureau's position. He does not share a personal opinion. That answer, or non-answer, goes into the file. And then we arrive at the document that should make anyone paying attention very uncomfortable. January 30th, 1967. A secret classified memorandum originates from the FBI's legal attaché office in Mexico City, file number 105-5844. The subject line, W.R. Hanawalt. Information concerning. The classification stamp sits at the top of the page like a warning. Inside, the memo references information provided on December 30th, 1966, and transmitted via telegram to the Federal Security Police in Mexico. Classified secret, with instructions that it not be disseminated outside the Bureau without prior approval. What follows is a remarkable document. In it, a man from Harlingen, Texas, named W.R. Hanawalt, lays out what he claims to know about a technology he calls the laser ray or cobalt ray. He describes it as a self-enveloping mechanism, like a cocoon, capable of manipulating the entire nervous system. Visions of flying objects, he writes, are merely faulty, vision-controlled, and entirely real to the individual experiencing the phenomenon. He claims lie detector tests can be positively controlled without the subject's knowledge. He describes the monitoring of people's thoughts at highway speed using equipment carried in trucks and rental trailers. He states they have infiltrated almost every business level. He claims to have been targeted since 1946 for what he learned in the Navy during the war. He believes most of his driving accidents were premeditated. Can you believe this? This is actually written in an official classified document. The FBI received this telegram, routed it, classified it secret, sent copies to the liaison section and the San Antonio field office. The document contains no notation dismissing it as the ravings of an unwell individual. It is treated, at least procedurally, as intelligence. At this point, we can no longer call it a coincidence that the FBI's UFO file keeps absorbing material that, from any outside perspective, appears to describe either genuine unknown phenomena or the collapse of personal reality. The Bureau is a vacuum. Everything goes in, almost nothing comes back out with a clear answer. Then comes the German test pilot. June 8, 1967. FBI Miami Field Office. The report is addressed R.E. Paul L. Pyrl, information concerning. Pyrl, a former Luftwaffe pilot, had graduated from the German Air Academy in 1943 and served on the Russian front. Near the end of 1944, he was released from combat duty and assigned as a test pilot to a top-secret project in the Black Forest of Austria. He observed during that period a saucer-shaped aircraft approximately 21 feet in diameter. It was radio-controlled. It had jet engines mounted around its exterior. The outer ring rotated, while the dome in the center remained stationary. His job was to photograph the object in flight. He states he was able to retain a negative of a photograph taken at 7,000 meters, 20,000 feet. He also retained a still photograph of the object parked in a hangar, taken, he told the FBI agent, at the risk of my life. The aircraft was engineered by a German designer named Kür, who Pyrl believed was subsequently captured by Allied forces. He states this type of aircraft was responsible for downing at least one American B-26. He had withheld this information for 20 years because he assumed the United States already possessed it, but the continuing denials bothered him. He believed such a craft would be beneficial in Vietnam. He brought the original negatives to the FBI. What I'm about to say explains why this section of the file demands careful attention. Pyrl's account is detailed, internally consistent, and accompanied by physical evidence, photographs that the FBI received and documented. The FBI report neither confirms nor refutes the aircraft. It simply records what he said and what he gave them. The negatives are referenced. No further action is noted. The file moves on, as it always does. By October 1967, we are back in Dallas. That anonymous woman, the one who refused to give her name, has now provided what may be the most extraordinary single page in this entire collection. She states, as recorded by Special Agent Earl O. Cullum, that she fears for her life because, she tells the agent, persons who saw UFOs have died mysteriously in the past. She will only meet officials at the Dallas FBI office, nowhere else, and she has additional information she is prepared to share. Information regarding the destruction of a Moon Explorer vehicle by beings from outer space, and how those beings shot down the Russian cosmonaut. In April 1967, Soviet cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov had died when his spacecraft Soyuz 1 crashed on re-entry. His death was publicly attributed to a parachute failure. This anonymous woman was telling the FBI a different story, and the FBI filed it. The years in this document keep moving. Letters pour in from citizens across the country. A man in New Jersey who believes a UFO he witnessed the night before a Pan American Airlines crash in 1963 was laying air mines. A correspondent in 1969 asking about men in dark clothes with Oriental features who reportedly terrorize UFO witnesses, run them down with cars, tap their telephones, and photograph their homes. The Men in Black, described to the FBI in 1969 in exactly those terms. A New Jersey citizen writing to Hoover, President Nixon, the Secretary of Defense, and 2 U.S. senators simultaneously, warning that America is about to pay with 60 million lives because the government scoffed at UFO reports and allowed the radar system to be compromised. And throughout all of it, the same FBI response. Letter after letter. The Bureau is strictly an investigative agency. We neither make evaluations nor draw conclusions as to the character of any organization or individual. Your communication will be made a matter of record. The file ends in January 1977. The final substantive letter is from the FBI's Assistant Director for External Affairs, Donald W. Moore, Jr., writing to a lieutenant colonel at the Air Force Office of Information. He is thanking the colonel for sending the Bureau a copy of the Air Force's UFO fact sheet, and for apprising them, he writes, of the termination of your project. Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation, had been shut down in 1969. The Air Force had officially concluded there was nothing to investigate. The FBI is now receiving the formal notification, 8 years later. The Bureau acknowledges it, files it, and closes the correspondence. After all these pages, all these letters, memoranda, classified telegrams, photographs of saucer-shaped craft, testimonies of encounters with beings from other planets, warnings of imminent catastrophe, and the quiet institutional refrain that your communication will be made a matter of record, only one question remains. What did they actually know? Because this file does not read like the documentation of ignorance. It reads like the documentation of careful, deliberate, systematic non-disclosure. Every piece of information was received, routed, filed, classified where necessary, and then answered with the same 7 words. The Bureau cannot be of assistance. 50 years later, those words feel less like a policy and more like a decision.